O'Reilly.
Check engine light on? Take the guesswork out of your check engine light with O'Reilly Veriscan. It's free and provides a report with solutions based on over 650 million vehicle scans verified by ASE certified master technicians. And if you need help, we can recommend a shop for you. Ask for O'Reilly Veriscan today.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I want to know, have you considered what you need to do as your foundation as you are building your relationship? Let's explore it a little bit today.
Let's talk about love and marriage the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The No Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. Podcast. We'll help your spirit transform.
What's going on, lovely people? We thank you very much for tuning in to our show today.
The No Fruit Podcast.
So, as some of you know, y'all know our story, and we were dating for 3 years prior to getting married. So, Kafa,
Yes, Maurice.
what do you think we were doing during that courtship time?
Courting.
We were just courting.
We were getting to know each other,
Yes.
getting to know ourselves because we were very young,
We weren't very young. We weren't very
fresh out the womb.
young. We weren't that young. Nowhere near it. But I would say that, we were, I would say that I was fresh out the womb more than you. At least you went to high school. I was still
You didn't go to high school?
No, I was still in kindergarten.
Oh.
But during those 3 years.
So there is an age difference between Maurice and myself. We
Yes.
have several years between us.
Yes.
I'm much more older and mature. He just acts mature. But in years, I have more years in life than he does.
Yes. So and we spoke about it in previous episodes, but we're only 2.5 years difference.
To have him tell it, it's 3.
It's because of the number.
Because of education.
It's just a number.
So, I graduated 3 years before he did,
Yes.
but I'm 2.5 years
Older.
his senior.
Yes. But as she stated, when she first saw me, she thought I was older.
He didn't act like he was 19, 20
Well, it's hard to act that way if you are
in church.
I wouldn't say in church, but you're in a leadership role.
Okay.
That's my opinion. You have to, show something else.
Okay.
So
Well, again, it's, different strokes for different folks. I guess
Right.
in my church, we didn't have a whole lot of youth leaders. We only had a few youth, but never really had youth leaders. Most of the leadership was in those that are older. So,
right.
Again, different strokes, different folks.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't aware of all of the youth programs
Mm-hmm.
connected to that denomination.
Right.
So therefore, I didn't know about youth leadership
Right.
in that regard.
So yeah. So but
So
that,
during those 3 years, what do you think we were doing?
I think that we, as you stated, we were testing the waters. We were trying to understand where we wanted to go in life. One of the things that, as you and I have spoken about over the years, whether or not like, hey, is this person really for me? And and especially as we get older, I listen to even with my brother, like he met somebody and then he married them like within the same year type thing. So I wonder sometimes how important it was for those 3 years. Even though we were young, relatively young, but I wonder if that's a great barometer, because I've even had other family members that dated for over 10 years, well over 10 years, and then got married and still kind of marriage disintegrated, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that pocket of 3 to 5 years, is that the right length or idea Because even like when we look at our children right now, being 23 and 21 respectively, I wonder, like, once they get into a relationship, are we going to encourage them to, like, date and date for a while, so that way you get through all the bumps and bruises?
I don't think you get through the bumps and bruises. And I mean,
Not all of them, but a few.
I think a lot of that depends upon your age.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you're looking at us and we dated for 3 years.
Right.
Again, we're young. Our living situation is different.
Yeah.
Living with parents, living with family members, living on our own, whatever that is different.
Right.
Our expectation of life, the things that we do on a daily basis is different than, like you said, your brother who is, 40 years old at that particular time, I guess, and dating and then getting married within a short period of time. I think, again, when you're 40 plus, perhaps you're not needing to evaluate as much. You kind of know what you want, or you've experienced some other things like, hey, I've been married before and I don't want this, this, and this.
Right.
So you go look for something else.
Right.
Like I was saying, I think in your 20s, not only are you trying to understand your relationship, but you're trying to understand yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You've had, even if it was a long-term relationship as a boyfriend and girlfriend, 14, 15, up to your 20s, the expectancy of what you want out of that relationship and what you are willing to give and what you can give, what you can lose is vastly different than if you're in, later on in your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think you have a whole lot more to gain and a whole lot more to lose when you're over the age of, 40 and dating, over the age of 40 and trying to look for that lifetime, long time partner. I think, those things are different. So at that particular age, when you're 40 plus, are you going to want to date for 3 years? Some people, I think at that stage, like, i.e. your brother, like, I'm not going to play around.
Right.
Like, I'm looking for wifey material.
Right.
If you
right.
fit that, then let's go ahead and do that. Like,
Right.
why? We can date once we get married.
But I think that
I think, yes, you need to make sure, no one is a serial killer and, that, again, when you're 40 plus, like I said, you have more to lose. So, do they have a horrible credit score and they owe as much as the United States, trillions of dollars? You have to evaluate all of that.
So I think that's why that dating period prior to. Now, I hear what you're saying, because right now we're comparing, in my opinion, apples and oranges. Maybe even pears and cantaloupes.
The No Fruit Podcast.
Yeah, right. Right. And I'm saying that because, when you and I met, I was 19.
Yes.
When we started dating officially, I was 2 months short of turning 21. So, and I want to say, I guess I guess that February, I guess we kind of said, hey, we are dating in February. And then I turned 21 in that April, so from 21, quote unquote, to 24, when we did get married, a lot of things changed. A lot of experiences happened in that time.
For anyone that's between the ages of 21 and 24, a lot of things happen, a lot of things change.
So we were able to date and break up and come back and, understand, like, oh, I really do love her. I really do miss, stuff, right? So sometimes we don't give ourselves enough space to go through that roller coaster. So to the point of individuals like, that start off fast. Hey, we're going to date for a short period of time, and now we're going to jump the broom. That doesn't mean that it won't happen or it won't last long. But I think that there are some things that you still got to learn about that individual, like you stating. Credit report, you need to understand what's on that.
Right.
I
I mean, and again, it's different when you're 20 years old. Like, hopefully at the age of 20, you haven't ruined
destroyed it.
Yeah, like, and then you have a whole lot more life to live to make changes. You haven't really
correct it a little bit.
You haven't really become that thing. Like, if your credit score and you've lived from adulthood of 21, as you're saying, up until 40, and you always have maxed out every card all those years, then it's going to be hard to be like, oh, let's make some changes.
Right. Because
now
that's your habit.
Right.
Your lifestyle.
But if you're 20, 21, and you're just starting a relationship, then these are things you can talk about and be like, hey, well, I do this when I get paid. Well, have you considered this? You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can make those changes together. Where, again, like you said, we're not necessarily comparing the same type of relationship, but your question was, hey, how long should one, or how long should a couple date? You know what I mean? Prior to taking the relationship serious or getting married. And as Marie said, hey, we did this thing for 3 years. Again, I don't know, Maurice, really, if things were different, if we were more established, if we were older, would we have waited that 3 years? What do you think?
No.
Right.
Not for us. And I say that because for us, I'll speak solely for myself. I knew how much I care for you. I knew how much I loved you. And there was a sense of excitement of being with you that I still get today. That hasn't gone. And so and for those of you who don't really know the story, I think we've talked about it, but beginning or ending our 3rd year, in essence, kind of going into our 4th year of dating, because we got married in between like that 3.5 year mark. So, but what happened is because we were starting to plan life differently, I would say really 2.5. Because then, we were like, hey, we're going to do this thing. We're going to stay together. And Kafa was looking to make changes in her life, and I was looking to make changes in my life. And so that 2.5 year mark, we were really starting to transition a little differently. And so then, and I was in and out of jobs. Let's be honest. I was in and out, part-time stuff here and there or whatever else. But then I started to become very, very serious. And then Kafa decided she wanted to move. So I have to say that once we started talking about that, and it made the young bull in me, right, get his crap together, step up to the plate, if you will, for that age and that time period, I started a job from a temp agency, which, and we just went through that whole thing trying to find a temp agency for our daughter. Like, that was the weirdest thing. Like, it's almost like they're non-existent right now. But I started a job in January. I was hired full-time in February, right? And at that time, at the same time, Kafa, I had bought a house. And so, interesting enough, because if you want to talk about, hey, short amount of time, right? If I started a job in January, became full-time in February, and my, of course, salary rate, jumped. Kafa bought a house in February, March. By May, I had already moved in. September, we got married. And if we were more stable, I do believe that just like that happened in a true 9-month period. Now let's be honest. We did prior to, because we had talked about getting married and all those type of things. So we were going to wedding shows and, all the, so we weren't necessarily totally green with the wedding thing.
Right.
Because we had already been looking.
We'd actually picked a date, I think, the year before or prior. I know we had a different date in mind.
Right, we did.
And then we switched to this, other date. So I don't remember.
But I would say that, because of getting the house. Let me rewind. We started a job, bought a house, bought a car, moved in, got married, right?
Right.
And so in a 9-month period, our lives changed
Drastically.
Mm-hmm. And so, and I will venture to say, in those 9 months, 3 months before that, we were really speaking about what our future was going to be. Like very, very deeply about it. And let's go make this thing happen.
Right.
And because I was scheduled to start that job in January, right before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Because that individual that was, because it was a temp job, the person was going out. Like they was going to be sick or something like that. They had surgery or
They're
something like that.
on medical leave.
Yeah. So I was supposed to be taking someone else's position for just a little while, and then it changed or something. So I wasn't necessarily supposed to be, because I went in as a file clerk, and then I showed my worth, and it blew up from there.
Mm-hmm.
So
and you had more experience than file
right.
clerk, so just
I mean, and I'm 24 years old, so I'm still able to transition, bounce around a little bit differently, different type of energy, all that type of stuff. So I think the 3 years of getting to know one another, deciding if we're really for each other, not get caught up so much in, I mean, it's infatuation there. Yes, let's be honest, right? But in the 3-year period, I do believe that some of that starts to wear off a little bit, little by little, even
right.
for myself. And so now you start getting into the weeds of, can I see myself being serious about this individual? And that's what, for me, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I no longer wanted to play house. Not really. I didn't want to play house to begin with. I was always I was always a serious person. I didn't want to do that. So, yes, I think that 3 years was important. I think the 3-year mark was a turning point in our relationship. Was it too long or too short? I think for us, it was just right.
Right.
Because if we would have gone longer, I think we would have fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Because then we're like, hey, are you serious? Are you not serious? You playing around, whatever.
We've talked about this before that, Marie says I gave him an ultimatum where he's saying, are we serious? Are we not serious? Where is this going? And I guess me again being his senior, a little more mature, I was in the process and wanting to buy a home.
I mean, she was in the process of thinking of that before we even got together.
Right. So, here we are dating, and it's just like, okay, am I including you in this equation of purchasing a home? Am I buying a duplex? Because I'm just going to be by myself, and, it'll be part income property. And if something happens later on, then both of them could be income property. Or am I buying a home for us to build our life on? So we had that conversation, and from that, I guess he said, it was an ultimatum, along with the women that I had in my life. Well, not all of them, but some of them had long-term relationships, and that wasn't something that I wanted. Like Marie said, he was serious about relationships and about life, and I was too. I was not wanting to have a long-term boyfriend. I did not want. I just didn't want that in my life. I kind of fashioned myself again after a lot of the, I guess, 80s TV shows, where you had a mother and a father, a husband and a wife type thing. And I wanted that. I didn't want what my parents had. I didn't want what some of my mother's siblings had or anything like, I wanted that, that union.
Right.
So that's what I aimed for, and I think that's what kind of, as he said, what are you in it or are you out of it? I think for me, it was just knowing one another and just having a different mindset than other relationships we may have been in. So I think that was the difference. Again, it was just, was 3 years enough? There's some power in the number of 3. I'm gonna go there on that because we are the No Fruit Podcast and we come and hit things from a spiritual and a perspective. But there's just power in that number of 3. You guys can think about that. 3 wise men and the 3 days and he got up. So there's just such a power there. So I don't. I guess the Trinity. Father, Son. The Holy Ghost. So I think there was just something there that was the right time. That was the right switch. That was the right time to transition from one type of relationship to another type of relationship.
Right.
I think when I look back, Maurice and I kind of like you said, we had those conversations early on. I don't know when we kind of had like, oh, here's a promise ring, type of a thing, or I'm committing myself, unto you, and I want to do this thing for real. And then, like you said, we had some ups and downs and just learning ourselves, and understanding what that commitment really would be was tough. Again, ups and downs with work, ups and downs with life,
right.
And whatnot. So, never really anything that was like so hard that would break our relationship. It was more an internal reflection,
Struggles,
you know what I mean? And like, hey, am I really ready to be this much of a grown up? Am I really ready to do this? And then, like we said before, we were the first of our friends kind of getting married. I think I had somebody from high school that had gotten married prior to. But other than that, like family wise, like, there weren't that many.
I was the first, period.
Yeah, marriages and things like that. So
I was the first to get married. I was the first to, I'll just leave it like that. First to get married, because I wasn't the first to have a kid, but I was the first to get married. I think there were some of my friends that were. I didn't have a whole lot of friends that was like, yo, I need to play the field like that.
right.
I didn't have a whole lot of that, but, but overall, like I had, especially the ones that I was closest to at that time. Now everybody was kind of like, I'm serious. I'm trying to, settle down. But also, I think with that as well, which I'm pretty sure we'll get into, which is how our faith really,
Played a part in that.
played a part of that as well. So but I think that 3-year mark was a very key point. Because a lot happened in those 3 years.
Or, and I want to put it out there, like, I'm not saying, hey, 3 years is it. And like, hey, once you hit the 3-year mark, then you can, if you survive 3 years, you should get married. Because I think there's some people that don't put enough into those 3 years, that they're just one-sided with things. Like it's just all about the physical attraction, or it's all about events and things like that. And they're not really getting anything out of that 3 years. So I think you have to not only do self-evaluation, but, talk to one another and figure that thing out.
So I think what helped, and Kaf, you and I spoke about this before. You and I spoke about it, but I'm not sure we talked about it on the show. We might have. Where Kafa was living, she was in an apartment, and there's a mall that has to be a good 3-4 miles away. It has to be. At least that's the way it felt when I drive the car that direction now. Um, but we literally just took the time and walked there and walked back.
We didn't have
Now,
that in mind, though. We were just,
we
again,
didn't.
the foundation, we were talking. We were having a good time. I don't know why we were out, why we were walking, but enjoying one another's company. I don't know. Yeah, were we
But I
waiting for a
think
bus and just decided to walk it and the bus never came? Don't know. We never went to the mall.
we never. But the thing, we never walked on that side either. Not really to catch the bus. At least I don't remember. That's the way we started off. But what I'm getting at is that for us to walk a 4 miles where it's just she and I, right? Whether it was 4 miles together or 8 miles, whatever it might have been. I think that was a very pivotal point, at least for me, because that something like that I had never done. That doesn't mean I haven't walked with other people in the past or whatever and get so, but I've walked with somebody and been that consumed with an individual.
Mm-hmm.
Not like that. So, so I just wonder, do people take that idea, that moment, that opportunity where you're like, hey, like I'm really consumed, I'm really engaged with this individual, where everything else, I mean, it was a spring, summer, fall, whatever it was a really nice day outside, so I don't remember traffic. I don't remember other people walking past us. All I remember is Kafa's brown eyes. That's all I remember. You get what I mean? I remember her smile. I don't remember we held hands. Like there's certain, like I just remember us walking, me looking at her, and just like, wow, like I really am digging this young lady. I was really, really into her. So I wonder how many of you have had that experience,
Mm-hmm.
because that doesn't come often, right? That doesn't happen often because we get so consumed a lot of times with everything else that's around us. So
Or what we want out of it. I think a lot of times there's, relationship goals was a big, huge thing at
Yeah,
one
it
particular
was.
time.
It
And,
was.
hey, well, my goal is this and whatever. But it takes time. Like that might be the goal. And again, I'm saying this, but again, I said, hey, I don't want to date forever. But we just have to kind of be in the same place, on the same page and moving
Right.
towards the same thing. And I think that was one of the things. We both realistically did not want this to be a 10-year,
It
prior
wasn't gonna last that
to
well.
marriage. You know what I mean? Like Murray
Yeah.
said, hey, it wouldn't have lasted that long. Something would have pulled us apart. So
Mhm.
perhaps, but I think because we both wanted to make that commitment, because of faith, because of our own internal desire
Right.
and goals and whatnot, it worked out. So building a foundation during the last 3 years, the first 3 years of our dating, because we're still dating.
Yeah.
We look forward to dates, and sometimes they're little, hey, let's go out and get something for lunch dates.
Mhm.
Or sometimes it's like, sit back and watch a movie and pop some popcorn. Or sometimes we go out.
Right.
It differs, just like it would be if we were not married.
Right.
We don't make a big to-do out of it. Like, hey, put it on your schedule. It just kind of, some things just kind of happen.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit more up in the air and spontaneous,
Right.
which I think differs a little bit when you are not living with each other, because you kind of have to plan it. Like, what you doing Friday night? Nothing.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
or, I think the spontaneity that came along while we were in our 20s prior to marriage was, as he said, we sang on the same choir.
Right.
So we may not know we're both going to end up at the same event to sing, because it wasn't like we took, who's going to be there. And we came from different locations and things like that. But sometimes afterwards, it's like, hey, you want to go get something to eat afterwards or whatever? How are you getting home? And that type of thing. And that became a little bit more of I guess, the spontaneous side. We didn't always have that planned. But then there were things that were planned. Like, hey, meet me here. And we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would like to know, do y'all think 3 months, 3 years, 3 minutes, 3 decades, whatever your 3 is, what is long enough or not long enough?
And I would like to know, like, what things do you think are needed to build that foundation?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, let us know, like, what advice would you give to someone else like that? Hey, in order to build your foundation for your relationship. And again, we're talking about dating, but that could be anything, what's needed? What things do you need to build upon to know that it's a good, sturdy foundation?
So,
Thanks.
3 months.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the No Fruit Podcast, where we bring you fruitful conversations, ripened wisdom, and love that's deeply rooted. We hope today's discussion left you feeling uplifted, encouraged, and ready to take on life's journey with purpose. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration in their day. You can catch up on past episodes, send us your thoughts, or learn more about us on social media. Until next time, stay rooted in love, and remember, every seed you plant today shapes the fruit of tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you next time.